Hello, welcome back to the weekly MEF webinar. I'm your host, Ross Flynn from MEF. And last week I was here just talking about voice, and I'm here talking about voice yet again, which is great. I'm at this, we have this webinar, which is kindly sponsored by Globe Teleservice. So thank you for sponsoring. And yeah, it's all about voice managed service and how you can basically reduce the sort of high maintenance cost that might be associated with voice. At MEF, we unfortunately don't talk about voice enough, in my opinion. We were just saying how important it is as, as a medium, basically in countries where internet might be down for whatever reason, you can still call people on the phone. So it is so important that it continues, and it's a very valuable sort of tool in an operator's toolbox. So first, I would like to introduce Tejas Sawant, who is the President for Strategic Partnerships at Globe Teleservice. How you doing, Tejas?
Hello, everyone.
Hi. Can you introduce yourself briefly and yeah, just
Great.
maybe also set the scene a little bit before we go into the PowerPoint?
Perfect. Okay, so I'm Tejas Sawan. I'm the Vice President Strategic Partnerships for Globe Services. Have been in the company for almost 9 years now, and have got a chance to work with the management closely on all the managed services that we have taken and our strategic alliances with operators globally, and always trying to create value
Excellent.
for the company.
Perfect. And you have some slides you're about to show us, but before that, we have a very stacked cast of panelists today. So it's a very exciting webinar. And if you have questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A tab below. But next up, we have Vipul, who is the sales director for Orange. How are you doing, Vipul?
Hi, Ross. Thanks for the introduction. I'm doing fine and looking forward to this discussion.
Perfect. And then we have Pietro, who is director for mobility sales for Etisalat. And
Good evening, everyone from Dubai. Very looking forward for this discussion. Exciting topic, very close to our heart. So bring it on.
bring it on. Yeah, I like that. Okay, perfect. And then we have Nicholas, who's the vice president for voice and mobile solutions at Deutsche Telekom Global Carrier. Hi, Nicholas. How you doing?
Hi, I'm fine. Hello, everyone. Happy to be part of this and looking forward to also hearing some feedback from my colleagues around the globe to see how they see this business going forward. So looking forward to it.
It's a
Thank you
very
for
global
the
lineup for
invitation.
sure. Yeah, excellent. And last but not least, we have Maria Obrink, who is the head of sales for Telenor Links.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you guys. I'm
Perfect.
looking forward to this hour.
Yeah, we have a solid hour. I think we're gonna probably run over with the amount of stuff that we have to say, even though we have a full hour. But before I get ahead of myself, when we get into the questions, I will share my screen for Tejas. So perfect. So we full screen. Can you see that, guys?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Ross.
Excellent.
Before we
Okay,
start,
the
I would
show is
like to
yours.
give a Okay, so before we start, I would like to give a special thanks to MEF today. MEF has been a pioneer in addressing various topics in the messaging forum and opening the forum today for such a prevalent topic in the voice industry. Our topic of discussion today is voice managed services for the MNOs, and we'll go through it.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, what is managed services? Just going by the definition, managed services refers to the practice of outsourcing the responsibility for maintaining and anticipating need for a range of processes and functions, typically with the goal of improved operations and reduced cost. Managed services can help businesses reduce cost, improve service quality, and free internal teams to focus on core competencies. Moving on. Okay. So why did the need for managed services arise in the first place? The reason for it is very evident. In the chart given is a glimpse of international voice traffic trend across a decade. It's notable to see that the voice traffic peaked in the year 2014 with a total traffic of around 556 billion and has only gone down thereafter. When I'm saying going down, it means only the billable minutes. The decrease in traffic is due to the smartphone penetration and OTT adoption, giving rise to increase in free minutes. Moving on. So this decline in traffic definitely affected the entire ecosystem, but the most affected were small telco groups and standalone operators. You can see top 10 carriers internationally who, with Orange topping the table at 32 billion minutes, they did in 2021. Small telcos and standalone operators do less than 20% of this traffic. However, The cost of operation is still very high. They have to maintain POBs globally, for better transit and quality, and also manage some interconnects. It's not really worth the money they spend on the infrastructure. Moving on. Can the MNOs take care of the situation? It looks difficult with current scenario. It's mainly affected by three main parameters. First, being less critical mass. Small telcos may not have the necessary volumes to negotiate their cost, which leads to the cost being consistent or even increase over a period of time. On the contrary, they might also not have effective firewall systems in place, which can take care of SIM routes and detect and block them. So revenue leakage via SIM routes is quite evident. These operators are mainly functional in areas where the MTR is very high. This further gives scope for the gray routes to be prominent. Okay. Table below is illustrating the entire ecosystem, like how the business is done traditionally, how the group consolidation is done, and how an outsourcing partner can add value. You can see OPCO A, OPCO B, and OPCO C of a small telco group working in isolation with international operator X, Y, and Z, respectively. The entire inbound and outbound traffic is managed by their own. However, someone like Orange or a Baobab, the entire traffic is consolidated at a group level, and the group takes care of their traffic and revenue commitments accordingly. Now, outsourcing partner can provide managed services by taking care of the traffic between the OPCOs and third-party traffic international carriers, while the group can simply govern the operations. There are two principles on which the managed services deal is run. It's a commercial principle and it's the operational principle. Commercial principle is nothing but the commercial terms that the MNO and managed services partner agree upon. They are mainly guided by an inbound commitment, an outbound commitment, and an off-net and a transit commitment, mainly. Operational principles play a very important roles when a group consolidation is done. Right? They might require an HR service to bring all the employees together working in different groups. And then there is definitely some governance to be taken care of while the entire transition is taking place. We'll talk about the inbound and outbound models in the webinar. I'll leave that for the discussion during the panel. More or less, I've tried to address the main points of what managed services is, and we'll further discuss it during the webinar.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for setting the stage. So maybe let's just launch right into it. Vipul, starting off with yourself, what are, beyond maintenance costs, what are the biggest challenges that MNOs are facing in the voice industry today?
Well, with around $32 billion in annual losses due to telecom fraud, I believe revenue protection is definitely the biggest agenda for the MNOs. So the areas which I see this covering, one is revenue protection on the inbound traffic, because, for some operators, it might be more significant, particularly in Asia, Middle East, Africa, where the termination cost is high. But this variance could be as little as 5% and as much as 25% loss on your inbound termination revenue. So that is the first concern. And definitely a cost. I mean, any money loss is a cost. Second is deriving the right value for the outbound traffic. I mean, not just in terms of the quality cost, but also in terms of the quality, because, if you don't give the right quality to the customer, we know the A-log drops, so you're losing money there as well. And plus, of course, you need to ensure you don't succumb to fast bypass, fraud, etc., which would eat up on your fair share. Third, I think the important element is, with a lot of countries moving to OBR, selectively for some destinations or globally for everybody, mitigating the A number manipulation is definitely another, important aspect on the MNO agenda. And last but not the least, there is the question of revenue growth. Yeah, you're sitting on a revenue, but you need to focus on revenue growth, which could be via corridor, retail pricing, new channel creation, whatever, which is again, an interesting aspect or challenge which the MNOs face today. And sorry, this is a little beyond the topic, but just to complete a 360-degree view on the MNO inside, there is also the subject of voice over LTE. We understand that voice over LTE for MNOs, they involve new roaming agreements and there is a cost of implementation. And while you know all the time that it would be eating into your voice traffic stream, but still it's like a necessary evil that you have to go through. So, I mean, in my opinion, those are basically the different challenges that MNOs face today.
That's a very comprehensive answer. Maria, do you think do you agree basically, or is there anything that Vipul might have left out, or yeah, what's your perspective?
From a Telenor perspective, I would say we have actually launched a lot of the Volta roaming rollouts in all of Europe. We're almost done. It's France, Poland, Latvia, and Lithuania left for various reasons. But so we have seen that shift of all the traffic moving over to the new technology. However, with that said, we see that both the data, of course, on the roaming agreements has increased significantly. And we also see that the voice traffic has not slowed down as much as anticipated, because you also have that kind of, what would you call it? Volta interacting, kind of when you're out roaming and it falls over to a normal voice call still. And we also see a lot of operator or subscribers switching off the Volta in order to go on 2G, 3G. The voice is still there. Of course, I agree with Vipul that it will vanish more and more. Another thing coming into the topic that you mentioned with the fraud, Vipul, is that to lift it a bit further, where we made a questionnaire in the market, and we actually saw that the average fraud dispute were of approximately 40,000 euros per dispute, and the recovering money is only 65 to 70% of that. That is something that usually slips people's mind, that it's so much money that is paid out on the fraud, on top of having to have all the systems in place, have all the monitoring, what have you. And that eats definitely into the revenue streams that you have. It becomes a huge cost instead.
Yeah.
So taking care of the routing and making sure that you have the top-notch systems, it's costly today.
For sure.
Indeed.
Nicholas, I can see you are agreeing, you're nodding in agreement.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with both of my colleagues here. I think when you look at it from a mobile network operator, as we are at Deutsche Telekom, all of these have a major impact in the way we look at basically cost of really managing it versus the benefits that you get from it. And again, as people said, all the complexities around it that creates issues. And it's in an environment that majority of the things you see in telco are not necessarily growth areas. This is one of the ones that is really, really on a fast decline because of what Maria said about Volte and everything else. So it becomes also a discussion of opportunity costs. I mean, if you have a number of people working on voice, is this something that you feel sustainable, and in an environment where having the right level of FTEs for your growth areas? Or do you see, okay, there is an opportunity that the people that I have working really on voice, I can, if I can outsource that complexity and have somebody else manage the many-to-many relationships that I have and consolidate it into one relationship, and I can reuse my resources in areas that I believe the growth comes from. So it's all about opportunity cost and how you mitigate that within the context of an MNO environment. And voice becomes the very, very easy one to say, okay, when you look at it from an EBITDA perspective, is this really a money-making scheme for me? And if not, how can I best optimize it, right? So it's all about optimization and at the end of the day.
Yeah. Tejas, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah. From our experience, it is certainly cash flow management or revenue assurance. Operators might not have the necessary systems in place to monitor the credit limits. Because of this, they have exposure issues, and which makes it extremely difficult for them to bill on time, send their invoices on time, and also take the payments accordingly. So cash flow management is definitely a big issue for the operators.
Pietro, we've been talking at sort of a top level here, but I wonder if you can kind of delve deeper into like specific cost components that would weigh heavily on MNOs in the voice space.
Absolutely. Okay. One component we already mentioned by Nicholas, the cost opportunity. So Nicholas already explained it very well. And that's one component that is really often overlooked because the time and the effort that we spend on managing a very mature and declined product is actually something that we can consider in investing in more value-added services, right? This is we all know and probably all agree in this forum. The question is why MNO are still doing it. Then we can debate perhaps later, because that's an interesting question. Because we always ask ourselves why MNO should outsource, but we never ask ourselves why actually MNO are not outsourcing. Because it's a no-brainer for us. You've seen the data, you've seen the status of the product that voice is in these days. We all agree that that's the way forward, but it does not happen probably as often as we think it should. Coming to more a practical level of obviously the cost will propagate itself across different layers of the organization, because it's not just about the cost of termination of outbound. This is just probably a consequence of the wholesale business. What we always push is for the organization to look at it holistically, and that's why the CFO is always a good person for us to engage with, because you need to look at more like at the cost that the organization is sustaining in managing 200 operators instead of just one, the trouble tickets that you are generating from all this array of carriers, the invoicing, like we said, the disputes, the fraud is increasing, which means you have a lot of costs related to managing that part. So normally people are always focusing on really the wholesale part of the cost, but actually, in fact, it's the entire organization that is benefiting from it.
Vipul, do you want to add any specific cost components as well?
No, I think Pietro has spoken very well. So, a couple of takeaways from my friends earlier. One from Tejas, he spoke about the scale and the interconnects. I think that is very, very big component of cost because, to give your users the right service, you need a large number of interconnects. You can't work with just a few carriers because then you cannot give a global coverage, the right global coverage to your customers, which is a cost. Plus, there is another aspect is understanding for smaller players whether they are on the right OBR pricing, whether they are paying the right price for the roaming traffic. So, all these put together, the knowledge and the scale is one aspect which gets ignored and which weighs very heavily on the carriers. And then the second aspect is, of course, the fraud management. There is international revenue share fraud, there is FAST, there is spam and ping, there is bypass, whether it is Simbox or CLI. And these require different types of capabilities. It's not one size fit all for the frauds. Some require AI and, intuitive kind of management. Some require a big global reach so that you can find the wrong routes and you can check those. So this, again, is a big cost component if you try to do it on your own. If not, then you're just subjecting yourself to all the costs that Pietro was just talking about, and that is a big component. Trust me, that when you have to manage a lot of fraud disputes, the invoicing, the the quality complaints, it just creates a big organization for no real return. And last but not the least, we spoke a bit about Volti. So there is a cost even there to invest on IMS platform, and there is a cost to renegotiating all your roaming agreements. And even these create a case for a managed service provider because there's no point in adding manpower doing it on your own when somebody can really do this for you.
Yeah. That's great. So we've been talking on sort of a global stage. So it would be nice to kind of get into specific regions. I'm sure it's not the same issues in the same places everywhere. So Maria, why don't you start us off? What are the challenges and cost pressures that MNOs face regarding voice, across regions that you're familiar with? And are there variations? Is it really the same problem?
There's definitely variations. I was on the a conference over in Bangkok in November, World Congress Asia, and they were actually sitting at the table, operators saying, if I could cancel my subscription, I would do so because I'm constantly spammed with phone calls that are trying to trick me into making payments or giving away my credit card, and that is painful to hear. So they have a massive incoming traffic stream, but they don't have full control over preventing what's coming in to the end users. We see huge fraud traffic from a Telenor perspective, where we used to have Myanmar, as you know, we sold it, but we're still handling their traffic. It's a lot of traffic coming out of Myanmar, trying to get into different regions because people are buying subscriptions there and trying to use them for whatever money laundering they want to do, or transferring money because that's the way someone mentioned before, to be able to pay someone outside of the country. They do it by moving assets over the phone. So that you see there. In Africa, you have a completely different, because the prices are much, much higher. So they are seeing much more of bypassing in order to make people able to make phone calls, as it's sometimes too expensive. How do you protect that? How do you get the operators to actually get their money? You don't see the same issues in Europe. I would say that one is more secure when it comes to the EU traffic, since it's the OBR regime. So it's cheap. It's the end users trust the operators, and they keep on calling. However, we've seen a massive, massive increase on the unallocated numbers being opened up in different countries. When Sweden opened up the OBR regime, the unallocated numbers on fixed just skyrocketed. And suddenly Sweden were the ones making Vangiri calls out to the world, trying to generate traffic into Sweden for just these IVRs. So being able to protect, to be able to stop the different scenarios that you have in the different countries and different regions, that demands a lot from a system. And be able to, I would say, one of the greatest things that we've seen that differentiates operators from operators when it comes to the fraud system is how fast you can actually stop payments. That's where the money lies. Being able to stop it immediately, then you can kind of protect your assets better.
Yeah. Sorry, Vipul, do you want to jump in?
No, I think it's Maria has covered it all. In fact, I just wanted to share another scenario where, off late we've seen there is an arbitrage on some traffic streams, like the call center traffic to China. And we have seen MNOs suffer because somebody decides to use your network to send that traffic and make good of the arbitrage, but your legitimate customers suffer because the end operator blocks your route. And this, again, I mean, these are, again, the different types of fraud, but this is where it's very difficult for MNOs to manage on their own, because your only route gets blocked, your legitimate customers suffer, sometimes for multiple days, because the operator at the other end has a policy not to open you back for next 7 days or whatever. So there are these are real life cases, and I agree with Maria on most of them. I mean, we face the same challenges in Europe, in Africa, and other parts of the world.
Yeah. Tejas, do you want to jump in?
Yes. From our experience in Africa, we have seen that maintaining the existing voice infrastructure is the most difficult part. In one of our projects where we were deploying a firewall in Africa, apparently the operator had not paid the AMC to the voice infrastructure provider. It made it extremely difficult for us to integrate with them. Now they are trapped in a vicious circle where they cannot put a firewall in place because they have not paid the old AMC. So the fraud can't be get in control, and there is revenue leakages.
Yeah. Nicholas, I wonder if you can speak to Europe a little bit more and to sort of to the West. What issues are you seeing?
I mean, when it comes to European aspects, first of all, I think whether you're talking about Europe or elsewhere, I look at it more macro kind of views. So again, wherever you have a regulated environment and your voice activities are regulated and really regulated, I'm not talking about some countries that try to fake the regulation, but really regulated. You have these issues of then becoming asymmetrical in terms of your revenue versus your cost. So it creates a huge issue from that perspective, and hence the creation of OBR in 2016, because we tried to mitigate it at some point in time because we didn't feel that the world was fair, from that perspective. But at the end of the day, regardless of where you are as an MNO, the key element is about customer experience. Okay, so whatever you do as an MNO, you need to make sure that the customer experience that you want to give is the best. Meaning exactly what some of my colleagues just said. If there is a CLI that gets taken out, of course your customer experience is impacted. By the way, the revenue gets impacted as well, because if there is no CLI, the customer cannot call back if they miss something on their mobile phone, right? So it's creating this environment. In Europe, of course, it is a very, very regulated environment. So from that perspective, the glide paths have created an environment where we are looking more and more and more into the efficiency of our voice activities, because again, we know where it's going. Right now, I am sitting in Bonn, so you guys all know what's happening in Germany from a regulated perspective on the MTR and the FTR, and you see it across. So it is regional, yes. These asymmetrical ways of revenue and cost allocation makes it very, very difficult to manage, and hence I think the more impetus. I mean, I go back to what Pietro was saying, that I guess you're going to cover a bit later, in terms of sometimes you wonder why in the world is it that some especially smaller MNOs, where they're not part of a large group, they don't have massive footprint, they don't have a lot of captive traffic, that they still keep pushing to manage this business on their own, right? I mean, what are the elements around it? Sometimes, I mean, I've been in this business for so long, maybe too long, it boggles my mind. I just don't understand the rationale in some cases. So but it is going to come. And again, in the areas where it's regulated, you probably see a quicker consolidation aspect. And in the non-regulated areas, yes, and all the areas that you just mentioned can defer this a bit in terms of creating the mindset in the management, whether I should do this on my own or whether I should outsource it.
Yeah. Well, why aren't we seeing consolidation?
I come from a finance background, so if you ask me, is that I always say and again, not in all cases. I mean, I see, of course, between Telenor, Deutsche Telekom, Etisalat, and Orange, and GTS as well. We are all part. I mean, especially the four part of the MNOs. We're all very big. We have a lot of captive traffic, so we want to be the consolidator. We don't want to be the consolidatee, right? And if anybody on this call wants to be the consolidatee, please let me know. Give me a call. Now you're happy to engage. So some majority of the cases, again, from a finance perspective, it is not a rational decision to keep voice business there, because when you look at it from an EBITDA perspective, when you add the full cost elements, it is not a money-making scheme. But it's, excuse my English, it's sexy because it's the only international part that maybe some mobile operators have. That's their only way outbound. So from an ego perspective, it makes it a bit sexy. It is a revenue driver, and unfortunately, some investors are still looking at revenue. So when you say, okay, if I want to get rid of this revenue, how would the investors look at me? What would my share price look like if I all of a sudden say, I write off 5 billion euros of my revenue and I'm going to give it to somebody else. So it's not rational. Again, in a lot of cases, we have 850 MNOs around the globe. Okay, and the picture that you showed at the beginning, the top 10 or top 12, I mean, if you are not amongst these top, let's say, top 15, maybe top 20, I have a very difficult time grasping that they're making really money out of this business. But it is again, it's revenue driver. Usually, most cases, the management doesn't have an idea, again, full cost, what is costing them, whether it's money making. And it's a bit of a job creation as well. Why would I go to my management and my CFO to say, by the way, what I'm responsible for is not really making money. Why don't we give it to somebody else? So of course this is not going to happen, but it's not financially, it's not rationally driven.
Pietro, do you want to respond to that, or do you have anything to add?
No, absolutely. I mean, as long as revenue deriving from the voice will still be such a heavy component, operator will still be doubtful on the way forward, especially on their approach to managed services, right? And unfortunately, and here we see a really difference in geographies. Some operator in certain geographies are still very, very attached to this P&L. And removing the voice business from this day-to-day management is somehow removing a leverage for them to steer the revenue even along the year, right? So voice managed service needs to think about this component as well, because the model that you propose to MNOs or group of MNOs has to take in consideration this aspect, unfortunately, even if financially does not make any sense. But if it's a part of the equation, you still must consider it. Obviously, this is a marathon. Okay, I'm trying the education of the MNO on making them try to understand that it does not make money; it's just a revenue. It takes time. And if you think about it, voice managed service have been around quite a long time, but actually only in the last really 1 or 2 years we really hear about them. And that's because it's really one of the few ways to grow inorganically in a declining market. I mean, we've seen the graph, voice is going down. So the only way you can really keep a little bit the growth is to absorb this growth through voice managed services of operators who are willing to do so. And typically these operators are the one, let me call them pioneers, that are moving to a more light asset telco, which, you know, are understanding that the transactional business and the costs driven from it don't make sense for their financial. But again, the world is different. That's why we like it. Especially at the end, you know, we are in 16 markets, soon 4 in Europe, 20, goes up to 40 if we consider the Vodafone partnership. So we do really see the spectrum. And there is still today a lot of difference on how to approach this.
Great.
I would argue a bit, because it's in a way of going, when you say that it's a lot of money still in it, like Nicolas said, most operators, Telenor, for instance, has done the mergers. It's not a consolidation, it's mergers, more of it, in both Thailand and in Malaysia. I have been there talking to them and asking them about their costs related to voice, because they see the revenue stream as we've been discussing, but they don't see how much finance is paying attention to it, how many trouble tickets they have. That's definitely a big source that everyone is missing out on. How many trouble tickets do you have? How many people are engaged in their knock? And how much do you actually have as outpayments on your disputes that you couldn't stop? And putting all of that together, they actually don't know, because they don't have voice as trading is so kind of detached to finance and technology. The IP connects, that's a no-brainer. Cost for that one is fairly low compared to the TDMs that we used to have. So that one we can take out of the equation, but everything else that comes up, that sums up to a major portion of cost. Talking to the CFOs in a company in order to make them do the outsourcing, they don't get all of those spectrums that are actually involved in the voice business. And we've done in 2020, we onboarded DNA that went into the Telenor group. So DNA in Finland. We actually, as a cost, we just lowered the cost by like 6% because it is very stable. And being in Europe where everything has got the MTRs, that's a no-brainer. But with the scale that we have of being able to gather traffic from around the world, we exceeded their expectations of revenue by 51%. That's quite a dramatic shift in the revenue. So there's money to be made if you go with one of the global operators. And on top of that, they actually reduced the fraud exposure, etc. And then they could use the same people to look at other revenue streams, untapped revenue streams, so that what you gave away to someone else to handle was freed up time for new innovations and new revenue streams. And that's what we have to look at as well. You can't just look at it as single revenue streams coming in or out of a company, but what you can actually do with the resources, because it's a lot of competent people out there.
Vipul, do you have anything to add there?
No, I mean, I have the same view. We've worked on outsourcing projects, and what we've seen is exactly the same. You cannot manage your own anti-fraud, but at the same time, you can use the manpower. I mean, it's not always about letting go of the people who are managing voice. And I think that is the biggest education that we as managed service provider need to do with the MNOs, that we are not trying to take away the job. Their job is still to manage the business together with us and maybe do more value added stuff. Once you free yourself from managing fraud and tracking your in and out traffic on a daily basis, which is managed by a managed service provider, then you start to focus on what next. How do you grow this? What are your key corridors? Is there a scope for retail promotion? So then you go out and explore the world which you've not explored so far. So, I think, and, as we heard before, that the fear of losing your own job, I think it's one of the big drivers. And of course, international business is fashionable. I mean, of course. So these are the factors, and it is these factors that you need to combat when you talk to people.
Great, thank you. We got to keep moving along. We actually have two questions in the Q&A. Tejas, do you want to take a stab at these? I'll read them out from you. So we have one from Chris Almeida who says, how can MNOs manage the reduction in top line revenue if they outsource to an expert?
If they
outsource to an expert.
Okay, so generally there are different models which are with respect to what a MNO and a managed services partner agree upon. One can be an inbound revenue commitment, where the managed services partner assures the entire yearly revenue to the MNO. They can further give or assure a cost reduction on their entire retail traffic. The managed services partner can help the MNO build corridors across. And the most important point, as I rightly mentioned, cash flow. The managed services partner becomes a single point of cash flow collection for the MNO.
Right, and we've one more question as well from Chris. Said, how do MNOs manage the human resources displacement in an outsourced scenario?
On this, I second Vipul. Vipul mentioned that losing the job, we need to take care of that. We have to address that topic very sensitively, which GTS as a company does. And I'm sure even my friends out there are doing the same. There has to be a model wherein we are taking care of the existing employees while trying to add value for the operator.
Right, perfect. Okay, let's move along. So, Nicholas, how can managed services, or sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. What specific types of managed services are most promising for MNOs to explore in the voice domain?
From our perspective, first of all, when it comes to any sort of managed service, be it voice, be it messaging, be it mobile solutions and roaming enablement, whatever it is, I think creating a modular environment for the customer to decide what parts they want to engage in first, right? I mean, it's not, first of all, it's not one fits all. That is impossible. So it has to be tailored. One thing. It has to be, from my perspective, it has to be modular, because again, deciding factors in terms of which part should go first and which part should not go first and so forth, because that I think one of the most important parts of any activity when it comes to outsourcing is about trust of the partner that you're dealing with, right? And that trust has to be built over time. And in this case, if it's a modular environment, it allows for that trust to be built and for the customer to say, I want more and more and more. I mean, I go first with my direct, let's say, long tail. I do my 80-20 rule, and I give you the 80% that doesn't bring any value to me, and I manage the 20% on my own to understand and see how my partner behaves, and then decide to do the rest. When it comes to fraud management activities, is exactly the same. When it comes to, I mean, exactly what Tias, you said that, by the way, that's a fantastic part, in the sense that today, if you're managing 250, 300 relationships, that means you have to send 300 invoices, and as Maria said earlier, you have to then have your finance people running after money from certain partners, and so your DSO gets longer and longer because your payment cycles get longer and longer. So having that done with a partner that just pays you bill once a month and you get paid 15-30 days later is a fantastic cash flow thing. So it's a great area, but that has to be built, because again, that means that partner to whom you just outsource also has to collect cash from the other party in order to be able to pay it. Otherwise, the whole ecosystem is not sustainable. So from that perspective, I think these are, I mean, it's not a matter of what kind of managed service, but it's how you go into this, whether you go all in at the beginning or whether you do it again in an iterative way and deciding how to outsource it later on. But it also has to be very, very flexible from that perspective. Of course, it's a no-brainer. The commercial model has to make sense, right? Otherwise, why do it? And just one element, and I want to go back to the question of one of the questions is, okay, how do you manage the fact that people are going to lose their job? I think that was the basis of the question. Again, when to be very frank about it, one way or another, this thing is going to happen. I mean, companies, majority of the companies are not charities. I mean, they are for-profit companies. So if the plan is to reduce headcount because they're not making money, one day or another is going to happen. So you're just prolonging the inevitable, right? So that's one thing. Second thing, again, I think it was Maria said that there is so much expertise out there, and the wholesale market is a very, very specific market, and you don't have we have a difficult time bringing enough talent to manage our activities. If the people are really, really good at what they do, why would you as an operator decide to let them go when you can reskill them, when you can bring into other parts of your activities that, again, I think that Maria said, that can make more money and things like this. So I can understand it's always there and people are looking at it from that perspective, but the reality of life is, again, if the company wants to do it, it happens. So it's not a matter of whether they outsource it or not. In our case, just to finish on that, in our case, for instance, and we have done quite a few of these outsourcing, and we have quite a few of these partners, is that because of the fact that the resources that we looked at were so critical and so valuable, we brought those resources on board, and some of those resources are still there working for us. So it can work both ways.
Yeah, Maria, I saw you agreeing. Do you have anything to add there?
No, it's just Nicholas said it. I agree.
Perfect. So I'll give you another question, Maria. So how can managed services integrate with like new technologies like AI and cloud computing and so on to improve the experience for MNOs and the end users?
I mean, you can there's a lot of untapped information that you can go through when it comes to, for instance, the fraud part, or how you want to define it with the flash calls and so on. You can today, flash calls, we haven't touched upon that one today at all, but that is a big loss for the mobile operators, where they are not able to tap into the flash calls. With AI, I think it's going to be easier to do so. I know you can buy firewalls for in order to protect your network for all the flash calls. However, when you do that, you actually have to do it for all the interconnects and not even the domestic ones. Otherwise, you don't have the full security. And if you try to, we've done some tests on our in our systems, blocking some CLIs and so on, and we just see the calls are moving on somewhere else. If they don't get through us, they would take another route. So in order to do the full prevention, I think AI is a great essence in order to kind of build upon it. A few years back, we had blockchain. That was the big buzzword. Now it's going to be AI for a few years, but I think that one has a much better potential of actually succeeding. And you can probably compare also the CDRs better to make sure that you don't pay for anything that you shouldn't pay for. Just adding all the CDRs and have the AI produce everything, find what flaws is in there, you will find money that can be saved, for instance.
Yeah. Vipul, do you have anything to add on that?
Well, for us, we have a voice solution which integrates our in-house AI-based protection using machine learning, which is developed by Orange Innovation, which is our R&D division. The aim is basically, like Maria said, on the fraud prevention, because you've got revenue share fraud, you've got spam, ping, different type of bypass, and these needs to be detected based on pattern, CDR analysis, etc. And this is best done via AI-based system, and that is what we do. And this forms the core of our managed services offer, because if you are committing something to a MNO, then first you need to block the fraud. I mean, all aspects of it. Whatever fraud we talk about, then as Maria said correctly, there is flash calls, and there would be newer things which keep coming in. And I think AI would continue to play a very big role there. Even on the other aspect, which I spoke about earlier, the call center traffic, I mean, all these things need to be detected through pattern analysis, through CDR analysis, etc., and proactively acted upon. And that's really the role that AI can play on the voice side.
Perfect. And Pietro, so, as looking ahead, do you see any potential for offering more advanced voice solutions that MNOs could offer when they explore managed services?
Absolutely. So I think we are in the beginning. I mean, we just started, so that there is many ways this can evolve. But we need to keep in mind that my personal opinion is that voice size matters. So the game will evolve around, of course, the ability of the operators to monetize the scale, because we know that's the only way that you can really make money around voice is to really make sure that your trading platform has enough value, enough critical mass, right? And traffic brings traffic. We all know that. So having said that, and this is also linked to what we were discussing in the beginning, the smaller operator really should seriously consider but not only voice, any transactional business, de facto move to this kind of approach. Larger operator, of course, have different leverage. So the model there, we mentioned VoLTE, the impact of 5G. It will be slightly different because the scale and the critical mass there is a little bit different. But managed service by themselves are leading the way for a kind of approach, because whoever of us is outsourcing, we are not replacing or substituting business. We're just creating a larger platform. So this larger platform will then be used by the operator to then create value on it. So We are not replacing people. We are not replacing business. We are just there to enlarge the capabilities of MNO and to make sure that they are accessing a larger engine. This is, we can use the metaphor of a car that basically you will still drive it, you as an MNO, but you will just have a more powerful engine, which is being given by the capabilities of the operator who is volunteering to outsource. So it will be interesting to see how it's gonna be evolving.
Yeah, Nicholas.
And to build on what Pietro said quickly, because if you have that car in mind, in order to be able to keep it up to service and keep it completely up to date, you need to have the better the engine, the better tools you are able to provide to the smaller operators as well. So that's the only way you can keep on top of being ahead or in line with what's happening in the market, to have the scale behind you.
Yeah. Nicholas, same question on to you, or anything to add there?
With respect to the AI part of it, sorry, Ross, in what?
I was asking about sort of, as MNOs explore managed services, like what is the potential for more advanced voice solutions? Do you think we'll start seeing more of those?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think everybody from the beginning, we said that the voice is a declining business, right? So in a declining business, what kind of advanced services do you want to bring if things are declining, right? So again, opportunity cost, right? So don't forget that. And so how much money are we willing to invest in this? And that's why, again, we all agree across this forum that, it just doesn't make sense for smaller operators to continue doing this on their own. But as an ecosystem, yes, we have to make sure that you provide what the customer's requirements are, okay? And you have to be agile enough to invent as you listen to your customers. Today, the customer says, again, as Marie said, I want to manage certain things like flash calls. How do you manage that? How do you detect it? Can I monetize it? Can you help me monetize it? Tomorrow, the customers might say, I am losing more and more on my inbound business. I am sitting in the Philippines. I have a very, very large CCaaS environment and a UCaaS environment. I need numbers. I need DIDs. I need international SIP telephony. Can you provide me with this? Because again, my voice minutes are declining, but I still want to be relevant in this ecosystem. The call center activities that Vipal referred to, and can you provide the access to that? Do you have that? So I think as those of us who are here again as consolidators, our responsibility is to make sure that we listen to our customers, who are the ones that are outsourcing their activities to us, and learn from them and ask them how. And again, be a bit like the hyperscalers are. Make sure when you listen to your customers, you also have people internally that can have a vision what's going to happen 2-3 years down the road, and start creating. Sometimes you need to create a need in the market yourself as well. And we are not necessarily very, very good at that, I have to admit, as telcos and MNOs. So we need to catch up, and we need to become more agile, and we need to become more innovative in terms of what type of solutions are there. What are they? Today, I don't know. I mean, I can think of a few, but I think I'm gonna keep it to myself, because not sharing too much knowledge here is not either, right? So
we're collaborating, but not too much collaborating. Fair competition, Tejas, actually, do you want something to add? Jump in.
With respect to AI, I think flash call is definitely a product of the future. It's a most preferred, or getting the most preferred way of authentication. The revenues from SMS might flow into the voice authentication via flash calls. It depends completely on the operator will. Would they like to further monetize it in the future? If yes, then definitely that is a solid product to look into. And luckily, GTS has its own in-house product, which we have deployed into Nigeria with a very big operator, and we are seeing the benefits of it for the MNO.
Tejas, staying with yourself, looking ahead, how can MNOs ensure the long-term sustainability of voice business alongside the growth of managed services?
So the growth of managed services is not only subjected to the good governance of a managed services project. It depends upon various parameters, regulatory issues, or the strategy of a MNO. MNO individually and an MNO within the region. For instance, if you see ONA, the operators in East Africa have united together to create One Network Africa. Here, they have ensured that the traffic and revenues keep increasing because of the corridor they have created. Similarly for ECOWAS.
Perfect. And Vipul, coming to yourself, can you share like a sort of prediction regarding the future of voice managed services for MNOs?
Well, the future of managed services for MNOs, okay, just well, the way I see the future of managed services for MNOs is basically the MNOs would exit. I mean, they would have to focus on their core business and let the managed services operator take care of what they do best. I mean, because and this would be a trend because it will be almost impossible for people to manage fraud and traffic on their own without the support of a managed service provider in the world that we are in. At the same time, I also foresee that there would be much fewer wholesalers who would continue to be in this space again for the same reason. You cannot be in this space which is of a declining bottom line and still continue to invest on technology and the scale to keep the business going unless you're really serious about this space. So there would be newer challenges to meet, and they can be handled only in a partnership between a MNO and a managed services provider, which is where we would be heading, and that is where the sustainability of the voice business is for MNOs.
Yeah, great. And Pietro, same question to you.
Look, I mean, as voice managed service for me is a way to solve problems, okay? To solve problems, to take the risk, because I also see a question coming in, which I would like also to reply briefly. MNO have challenges. We have listed it in the last hour. So if you're not able to absorb the challenges with an outsourcing problem, then MNO can just keep doing what they do themselves, right? And the challenges we talked about is in terms of revenue retention, cost optimization, fraud management, but also risk taking. We do see as that committing revenue for the inbound part, like we all discussed previously, is also taking on board a bit of that risk, and also dividing that risk together with the MNO can play a pivotal role in the development of voice managed services. So once again, I think nobody knows if this voice managed service they're here to stay. Maybe it's part of a cyclical phase. In 5 years, nobody will want to do it. So it's very important that the model we are proposing to the customer as an industry are also agile enough for them to also plug in and plug out, because they might be wanting to outsource for you for the next 3 to 5 years, but maybe in 5 years, the industry will be totally changed. So they will want to do it themselves again. And that's where this model needs to kick in, being flexible enough to allow the customer also that kind of comfort.
Excellent. And did you say you wanted to ask you saw a question you wanted to answer, or?
No, there was a very interesting question about, how can you protect from your risk?
Yeah, so I'll read it out just for the people watching, and maybe we can have a stab at it. So it's from Anonymous. So how do telcos or aggregators enter into voice outsourcing deal, protect their financial risk of commitment giving market trends? Do you want to take a stab at Pietro or anyone else?
I
will leave Vipul, yeah.
People, go for it.
Thank you, Pedro. So, I mean, on our side, we do not enter into outsourcing deals, giving a false commitment, first of all. I mean, Tejas shared initially in his slide that the market is declining at 6%. And neither us nor any operator can create magic. If the market is declining, the market is declining. You have to first accept that. And, any commitment has to be based keeping that basic principle in mind. What you can protect is the bottom line. So you can ensure that you maintain the profitability even on a declining market by, anti-fraud and all the other things that we spoke about over the last 1 hour. And second thing, what we can do, what we've done for Carrier is really targeting new traffic streams or incremental traffic streams by getting into the corridor discussion. So you know that from a X country, you've got diaspora, which goes to 5 different places. So you reach out to those 5 places, being a large wholesaler, to every operator and try to target that traffic and have retail promotion there. So, there are some things which are possible, some aren't. So you have to be realistic about outsourcing.
Mm-hmm. Great. And yeah, we are coming close to the end of the session. We have a tiny bit more time. So Maria, maybe I'll come back to you. I think Pietro asked this question at the beginning, and I'm going to ask you again. Why don't the MNOs outsource? After everything we discussed, why aren't we seeing more of it? For Maria.
Oh, it was for me. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Sorry, no problem, no problem.
No, I think they're a bit frightened of daring to outsource because it is at the same time you have your subscriber base that you're going to look after. Do you dare to trust the other partner? Do you dare to trust that someone will take care of your customer base? And also, while doing so, kind of daring to show that you actually did not protect your customer base as good as perhaps the outsourcing partner can do. I think that is some of the key elements. Just looking at ourselves in 2019, we made a major strategy change of disconnecting all the wholesalers, keeping the retail operators in the world. And we had been bragging about being very good in fraud protection on our networks. So while we were disconnecting the wholesalers, we also implemented a new fraud system. And we had to just admit that we had been leaking like crazy, not really living up to what we thought we were doing. Now we've developed a fantastic tool that is actually able to see everything on 6 minutes delay. With AI, it's going to come up to like per minute and then down to per second. So that one is evolving constantly. And so removing, being able to be fair and honest and transparent. I think that's what you need to have in order to dare to do the outsourcing properly from a lot of the partners. Daring to trust that the outsourcing operator or who's going to take over is sharing everything and is showing what they actually are doing with your traffic, how they're handling it. I think that's one of the key factors going forward.
Nicholas, is it the same from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned that a few points earlier about the fact that again it's a revenue generator, so why would MNOs want to and again the fact that the investment community in some cases are still looking at revenue lines, so it can be quite difficult to let it go. The other part, as I said, it's the fact that the top management, CFOs, CEOs are not really close to this. They don't understand that, again, EBITDA line, full cost perspective is not making money. And there's not enough transparency internally within MNOs to go to, again, as I said, to go to their boss and say, by the way, what I'm doing is not really making money. Let's do something else with it and outsource it. So there's this emotional aspect part of it that I think has a big issue. But for me, the major part of it, and again, talking about how can it shift, is that if the senior management of these organizations start to really take a quick look at if this business is, again, full cost-wise is making money, they would soon realize that it's much better to go and outsource that business rather than keep hanging onto it until it drops to become nothing, right? So that's to me that's going to be the tipping point.
For sure. Yeah. Guys, we really are running over, but Tejas, I want to give you just a chance for closing remarks. If people watching this didn't get anything, what would you want them to sort of get from this?
Okay, so managed service is definitely a thing of the future. And as a company who is providing managed services, I would like the operators be it standalone or group operators, to definitely give a thought about the future of their businesses. And our company and my friends are there to help you out. Surely.
Excellent. Great. I like that. I like that. Perfect. So we're at the end, guys. Thank you so much to my panelists. It's great to have a panel with lots of MNOs. You know, the first step to all these things is talking about it, and that's what MEF is here to do. I'd like to thank again Globe Teleservice for sponsoring this session. We really appreciate it, and thank you to the listener for being listening and asking great questions. And we'll see you next week. See you now. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.